All right. Well, again, just welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the second part in our Call for Speakers Speaker Series. We're so excited to have Vui and Claudia from the mobile track here today to give us this hands-on putting together a conference guide, a how-to guide. I said guide too many times in that sentence. For all of our Women Who Code events, we do like to get started by going through the mission, vision, and code of conduct, and just a couple of housekeeping slides about who we are and what we do here. So here at Women Who Code, our mission is inspiring women to excel in technology careers, and our vision is a world where diverse women are better represented as engineers and tech leaders. At Women Who Code, our values focus on the mission, live leadership, punch above your weight, and inclusion at the core. And so we thank you so much for joining our events today. Our general target audience is engineers with 2 or more years of experience looking for support and resources to strengthen their influence and level up in their career. But of course, we always welcome everyone, no matter where you are at your journey in engineering. We have about 290,000 members around the world, and we are growing with 70 networks in 20 countries. Over 122 countries represented in our membership around the world. And we put on over 14,000 events yearly with conference tickets and scholarships available as well. We also have a job board and lots of resources for all of our members that you can find on our website, womenwhocode.com. And our movement here at Women Who Code is, as the world changes, we can be connecting force that creates a sense of belonging while the world is being asked to isolate, particularly now during this pandemic. All of our events here at Women Who Code adhere to the Women Who Code Code of Conduct. Women Who Code is an inclusive community dedicated to providing an empowering experience for everyone who participates in or supports our community, regardless of gender, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, ability, physical appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, socioeconomic status, caste, creed, political affiliation, or preferred programming languages. You can find our full code of conduct and our incident report online at womenwhocode.com/code of conduct. And then, of course, I just wanted to call out that tickets registration is open for the Connect conference, as well as the CFP still being opened until October 15th. And so today's presentation is right in time for you to participate in that call for speakers process for the Connect Forward process in 2021. That will be hosted completely digitally online November 18th and 19th, and we cannot wait to see you there. I can post a link to registration in the chat right after I'm done with these last couple slides. And with that, I'm so excited to introduce our speakers for today's session. Claudia Maciel is an iOS engineer at Jack Henry & Associates. Using her background as a co-site director for the NASA STEM Coder Dojo K-12 programs, and as an airline pilot, Claudia has used her unique path to help her develop an often quirky but effective way to problem solve and teach others. Claudia's journey has been fueled by unrelenting passion for empowering people and sharing what she's learned. Since 2003, Claudia has built and trained others on how to develop mobile and web applications, which can be found on the App Store as Yarn Inventory, and a new one coming soon. So keep your eyes out for that. When Claudia isn't teaching, speaking, or working, she enjoys flying airplanes with her family and reading a good mystery suspense novel. And then with Claudia, we have Vui. Vui is a software engineer with over 20 years of experience over many technology stacks. Currently, she's a senior iOS engineer at Jack Henry & Associates, where she's been leading multiple projects and training junior developers. She's helping to build a world that she wants to live in, where women experience gender parity in tech. Vui does this through her advocacy as a lead for Women Who Code Colorado and Women Who Code Mobile, and by speaking at tech events, teaching workshops, and mentoring women developers on coding and technical speaking. Vui passes on to her mentees empowering tools and focused mindsets while encouraging them in their paths as future developers and speakers. When she's not coding, Vui enjoys fishing, eating, sleeping, and repeating, and glamping and traveling to different places to go fishing. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'll share that link for Connect in the chat and hand it over to our two wonderful speakers for this session.
Well, thank you so much, Sierra, for that introduction. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, and Sierra, you'll let me know if you can see our slides.
Yep, we're good to go. Thanks.
All right, okay, great. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks again, Sierra, for moderating our event and getting us started. We will be going over how to put together a conference talk as a step-by-step guide. And as Sierra already mentioned, your presenters today are myself, Vui, Nguyen, and Claudia, Maciel. And as Sierra mentioned earlier in the intro, I work at Jack Henry as an iOS engineer, along with Claudia here. I've been technical speaking for years. Before the pandemic, I used to give talks and teach coding workshops regularly at local meetups and conferences in person, and even ran my own technical meetup in the Denver area for a couple of years. During COVID, I've continued speaking, but now it's all online. That being said, I'm still learning and growing in my public speaking skills, and I'm always picking up new tips from watching other people speak too. Plus, I'm an introvert, so the lesson here is you don't have to be an extrovert to be a public speaker, and you don't have to be a naturally born speaker. I don't think anyone is. I got better at speaking over the years because I just kept doing it. I think it's a skill that you can learn just like anything else. And the Women Who Code community is a wonderful, supportive place where you can learn to become a speaker.
And hi, everyone. My name is Claudia, and I also work at Jack Henry and Associates as an iOS engineer. I've been doing technical iOS talks for about a year now, but in my previous role, I held multiple hands-on workshops for kinder to 12th grade students and teachers. I've done so many workshops, I've kind of lost count. But even after all of those, I can still honestly say that I really, really hate public speaking. And yet, as you can see, here I am in front of you. So if I can do it, you guys can all do it as well. During one of my talks, I was so nervous. I kept talking and pacing, and my hands were super sweaty that I hid them in my jacket pocket the whole time. I was a nervous mess. I still get nervous, but I found little tricks that help me, and I want to share those with you today. Today, we are going to be going over a 10-step guide on preparing a conference talk, including how to write a talk proposal. We will have a couple stories and encouraging words from Vui and myself. We have a link of resources and examples for you to look at on your own time. And finally, after our presentation today, we will have a workshop portion. We'll have a link later on in the presentation. It's not recorded, it's completely optional, but if you thought about writing a talk proposal, we'll be here to help you out with that.
And here again is that 10-step guide to putting together a conference talk. I'm not going to read through all these steps. I'm just putting it here. That way you know what to expect and what's coming up in this talk. And some of the advice in this step guide is a repeat of the advice that Sierra and Mackenzie gave in the first talk of the CFP Speaker Series. So I want to give a shout out to Sierra and Mackenzie for that first talk, and links to that talk will be shared in the resources at the end of this presentation.
Yeah, when I plan a talk, I start by writing out a profile for my audience. Who are they? What are their backgrounds? What are their hopes, their fears, biases, goals? And what are they expecting from my talk? Next, I ask myself some questions. What do I want the audience to do as a result of seeing my presentation? What do they need to know to inspire those actions? How do I want them to feel when I'm done? I then organize my talk around these points, and I always start my talk with a story. you don't have to cover everything there is to know about a certain topic, but it helps your intended audience if they know what it is that you're going to cover. And that's something that you usually put in your talk proposal. You want to always remember that it's about the audience, it's not about you. The audience will be more engaged and willing to listen more if they know what's in it for them.
And to add on to what Claudia just said, in addition to your audience, you also need to think about the scope of your talk. So do you want to give a 20-minute lightning talk, a 40-minute talk, or teach a hands-on workshop? And how do you decide? I would recommend doing a 20-minute lightning talk for a high-level overview of your talk and some details. This is appropriate for both technical and career-oriented talks. I'd recommend doing a longer 40-minute talk to dive into a topic with greater detail. And this is also appropriate for both technical and career talks. And finally, a hands-on workshop is a good idea if you're teaching something where you'd like the audience to follow along or maybe code with you. A hands-on workshop is also great if you want your audience to see you working on some code, and then you can give them links to your project or code afterwards so they can work on it on their own or use your code to help them get started on their own project. This is best for technical topics.
Yeah, so next step is the actual talk proposal itself. And some questions that arise with that is, how do I pick a topic? One thing I would suggest is to look at the talks from last year, and maybe there's a little motivation there in one of those talks. You could always look at the industry you're in and see what's popular, and then you put your own spin on it. If a topic is really niche, there's always a way of expanding it for your audience. Sierra talked about this in the previous talk. The talks don't always have to be technical. You can always talk about your experience learning something or building something. In this case, you won't get the judgy people or the critics, because nobody can really say you're wrong because it's your experience and what you went through. The talk proposal usually comes in 3 steps. There's the pitch. It could also be thought of as a description. There's a title and a little bio about yourself. I like to start off by writing the description. And you always want to have an engaging sentence, something that's going to hook the person that's reading so that they'll come and watch your talk. For example, something like my 4 tips to handling auto layout and never having to worry about size classes ever again. Or if it's a non-technical talk, something like how I went from 0 to a job as a software engineer in 18 months, or whatever your story might be. You can then follow up with more details on the topic. The features it's going to include, is it a UI kit versus Swift UI? Are you going to be doing some live coding? Or, are you going to have video demos? And then ideally in that description, you also want to list the takeaway. What is it that the attendees are going to leave after they're done? Is it going to be some hands-on code examples that they can use later on? What is it that they're going to learn? So remember, you always want to make it about your audience and what it is that they're going to walk away with. And the title itself is just like a condensed, unique version of what your talk is. If you're going to be talking about auto layout, let's say, for example, what makes your talk about auto layout different than somebody else's?
And then the next step is you want to think about your takeaway point. Your takeaway point is one thing you want your audience to get out of your talk. You want something that you want them to be able to do or understand after watching your talk. So your takeaway point will be the guiding light for your talk, and it will help you focus as you're creating your presentation. So you always want to go back to it. So for example, I gave a talk at last year's Women Who Code Connect Forward called True or False, Enums Manage State Better Than Booleans. I gave a demo of my project and then showed 2 different versions of my code, one written using enums and one written using Booleans. The takeaway point of my talk is that the enum way was easier to maintain and follow and less error prone and buggy than the Boolean way. So developers should use enums instead of Booleans to manage state in their programs.
Also, during that same conference last year, I did a workshop on using Swift UI to build a watch application. And my takeaway point from that workshop was to just get people to realize how easy it is to code using Swift UI as opposed to the old watch kit. And so maybe we'll see a lot more watch applications out there in the App Store. Okay, the next step is creating your outline. Planning saves time, and the same goes for creating a business presentation. You want to start with an outline. Usually an outline is a bare bones version of your talk. It should take the general direction of your pitch, plus some summaries of your key points. The purpose of the outline is to shape your thinking, organize your thought, and make sure that your material is presented logically. Sierra gave an example of this in her talk. Basically, she suggested that you take one of your ideas and you put it in one slide. And then later on, you come back in and you'll add images and bullet points. I like writing out my outline in like a doc or notes and then transferring that to slides. But once you get into creating an outline and creating a presentation, you'll find what works best for you. Those are just some ideas of some of the things that we've done. Then you have your outline, you'll start putting placeholders for images and bullet points. And so one thing to remember is when you're putting your slides together, you want to remember that you want to let your audience know why is it that you're doing something. You know, always bring it back to your audience. With your outline, you'll see that sometimes you'll have to add more content, or maybe you'll have to take some out depending on the scope of your presentation. All this just comes with experience. You'll have to try things and see what works best for you. And then you'll want to create your actual slides. It's not required to have one, but it's usually nice to have an overview slide, especially if your description doesn't give a lot of information about what you're going to be talking about. This way your audience know what it is that they're going to get out of your presentation. It shouldn't cover everything, just kind of the main points about what it is you're going to cover. You always want to remember, you don't want to crowd your slides with a lot of bullet points. It's better to have images or code snippets, or if you have a demo of your application, that works well. There's a rule, 1 to 2 slides per minute. It helps you estimate how many slides you're going to need. General rule, if you have like a 15-minute talk, you don't want to have 40 slides. That may be too many. More than 5 bullet points per slide is too much. You'll have to gauge it based on what it is you're talking about. And the bullet points should be 1 to 2 sentences. You never want to have a paragraph. You don't want to have your audience reading when they should be listening to you.
And step 6 are demos. So you want to consider giving a demo if it makes sense for your talk. A good demo can explain concepts much more quickly and succinctly than a whole bunch of slides. So include a demo with your talk, if it makes sense. I'd encourage it. And as far as when to give the demo, I would say do it as close to the beginning of your talk as possible, because then your demo can give context for the rest of your talk. And even if you decide to give a live demo as a backup, I always recommend recording it in advance in QuickTime. I have a bonus tip for iOS developers. If your demo can only run on an iOS device, you can project your device's screen onto your Mac using QuickTime, and then as a backup, you can record it as well. And there's different ways you can incorporate demos. Like I said before, you can show a demo in the beginning and then dive into code. You can also demo the code as you progress to show changes or improvements as you add things. This is especially useful for a 40-minute or a hands-on workshop. Now, I saw a really great demo that Claudia did when she once gave a talk comparing building an iOS app using UIKit versus Swift UI. So she recorded herself building the same app in UIKit and then recorded herself doing it again while building the same app in Swift UI. And then she played the recording sped up in the background while she explained the differences between the two frameworks. I had never seen anyone demo like that before, and it was different and a compelling way to present, I thought. And if you're debating between playing a recorded demo or performing your demo live, I would say either way is fine. Again, I would recommend having a recording available as a backup just in case, because even if you decide to demo live, live demos can sometimes go sideways, as I'll explain with an example later in this talk. And step 7, I want to talk about the lecture format. Now, if you're following a lecture format for your talk, which is suitable for either a 20-minute or a 40-minute presentation, you'll want to think about what to show and the appropriate amount of content. For 20-minute talk, especially if it's technical, it's okay to show code snippets instead of all of the code. You know, don't run any scripts or setup that will eat up most of your time. So run those in advance of your talk and mention them or share links to them in your slides. Examples of this could be setting up your development environment or running scripts that automate a hello world starting point for your project. You know, something that would normally take minutes to run and you don't have that time in a 20-minute talk. Now, if you're doing a 40-minute talk, you can show more code, but you still don't have to show everything. You know, show what's relevant, and you can still share the entire code base for your project later for audience members interested in seeing the entire project. And for both for both formats, the 20 and 40-minute formats, it's great if you can put your project in a public GitHub repo to make sharing with your audience at the end of your talk easier.
And if you plan on doing a hands-on workshop, if you're going to be building like an application or a website or something, it's a good idea to kind of start your workshop by showing what it is that they're going to be building by the time they're done. This gets people motivated and they'll want to see the project through. Planning the workshop, I like to kind of work it out on my own and document the process as I go, taking as many screenshots as I can while doing so. And this is just to help me when I'm actually doing the workshop. I would not rely on my memory, especially with code. I'm already nervous from talking, so I don't want to forget something important. So that's kind of why I document everything. And then I have my notes as a backup in case I need them. In preparation for giving a hands-on workshop, I'll try to do everything and rebuild it as many times as I can so that the code is fresh in my mind. When doing the hands-on workshop, it's a good idea to slow down and give everybody time to catch up to what you're doing. Because you've been practicing, you kind of know how everything's gonna flow, but your participants don't. Gauge the room though. If it's only one person, you don't want to slow down everybody else working. What I've also done in the past is I'll have the GitHub code, all my code on GitHub, but I'll have different branches for major parts of the code so that if somebody does happen to fall behind, all they have to do is check out a different branch and they'll be all caught up. If you can, you should have a moderator with you to help you with any questions or anybody getting stuck. Vui has done this for me in the past. She'll help out the participants so that I can continue with the workshop. So nowadays, and hopefully things will kind of open up to more in-person events. But as you know, a lot of things have gone online, especially conferences. So some tips that I have for you for online conferences is to use video, not just of yourself speaking, but to use video of your presentation. Record your presentation just in case, you never know. It's kind of nice to have a backup of your presentation, and then you could just play it. If you have a video of your presentation, that allows you to answer questions on Slack or on the chat live, so you don't have to wait until the end. Another tip for you is, it's kind of hard, but try to keep your session interactive. Ask questions and answer questions on the chat, whatever you can to, yes, polls, that's a great one. Also, if you're online, think about how you're having a conversation with your audience. It's not a performance. You're not here to entertain. You're here to educate. Say hi to everybody. We're still all people. If you have notes, your speaker notes, or a document with your code that you're going to be using, make sure that you set it up underneath your camera so that you're not doing one of these things where you look off the camera, but that way you stay engaged with your audience. And the last tip for you is to be aware of your background. If you're not going to be using like a picture or an image, just watch out. My kids have made plenty of cameos during my workshops, so just remember that.
And I'm going to share some tips for presenting in person. Now, I know in-person talks may not be possible for everyone to do right now, depending on the COVID situation and laws in your area. But for those who have that opportunity now and would like to present in person someday, here are some tips. In person, it helps me to make eye contact with the audience. This actually makes me feel less nervous. And as Claudia mentioned earlier, even with in-person, you want to treat your talk like you're having a conversation with the audience. This is not a performance where you have to be perfect. You don't want to talk really fast and rush all the way through. You know, pace yourself like with a normal conversation. And you can sit or stand, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. If you stand, you might gently pace in front of the audience or occasionally point out your slides. Because for me, just sitting or standing perfectly still makes me nervous. So moving around a little bit actually makes my presentation feel more natural and like I'm just talking to another person instead of presenting. And once you see your talk as just a conversation with audience, you know, it brings down the pressure considerably, at least for me. And finally, it's okay if you can't answer every question. You know, just do your best. If you don't know, you can just say, I don't know. I will sometimes ask the audience if someone else would like to weigh in on a question, because after all, we're all learning from each other and you don't have to know everything. Now we have some tips for handling nervousness and practicing. So make sure to allocate plenty of time to practice. Being comfortable with running your talk will go a long ways towards alleviating nervousness. So practice by yourself and in front of others. Practicing in front of others can give you valuable feedback too. Make sure to time yourself when you practice so you know how long it's supposed to actually take. And as far as nervousness goes, I would say lean into it. You know, tell yourself that you're excited, you're looking forward to this talk. Again, this is a conversation, an opportunity to share what you know with others and in return reinforce what you know. So, you know, it's not a performance, and remember, no one is judging you as harshly as you might be judging yourself.
Yeah, and I saw that a lot of you mentioned about doing talks in person in the future. Well, I just last month did my first in-person technical talk in over 2 years at iOS Dev 360, and I was super nervous. Like an hour before I was supposed to go up on stage, I got the really fast heart palpitations and the sweaty palms, and everything was just hot. And I had to do something, right? I mean, couldn't just sit there and freak out. So what I ended up doing was I had to go burn off all this excess energy I had. So I stepped out of the event room, and there was stairs outside the little lobby area. So I just went up and down the stairs as many times as I could until I was depleted of energy. Um, and that helped. That kind of helped me burn off all that excess energy. And I went up to the podium and I started speaking. Um, as I was up there on the podium looking down at the audience, I kept looking for Vui because she was in the audience, because it just seeing a friendly face in the audience really helped to just continue doing my talk.
Yeah, and I want to add that Claudia did a great job with her talk at that conference, and it was really nice to be there to support her. And we had quite a few coworkers who could only attend online who were there as well, and we all had very positive feedback for Claudia's talk. And now we want to share some words of encouragement for all of you. So, don't let fear keep you from speaking, because everyone makes mistakes, even experienced speakers like myself and Claudia. So an example is I once gave an IoT demo that involved using a website and iOS app that I built to turn on and off some LED lights on a microcontroller board. And this was an in-person talk. So at the time I couldn't connect the board to the meetup space's Wi-Fi, so I couldn't turn on and off the LED lights through my website and iOS app. But fortunately, I had a video of my demo pre-recorded, so I was able to show that. So the lesson learned there is it's good to have a recording of your demo as a backup in case things go sideways while demoing live. And another silly mistake I did, I was moderating a talk for another speaker. I had to share the WWCode intro slides, just like the ones that Sierra did for me and Claudia. Well, I didn't know how to present the intro slides in full screen mode, and it wasn't until after the entire talk was over that I realized there was a big present button in the upper right corner of the Google Slides. But the point is, don't let your fear of making mistakes stop you from speaking. Practice in order to give yourself more confidence and to ensure your talk goes as smoothly as possible. But if you still make a mistake, it's okay. The audience is a lot more forgiving of your mistakes than you are. You will live to tell about it, trust me. And again, I would say lean into your mistakes, laugh about it, own it, learn from it, and move on. You have a lot to gain, and the world has a lot to gain by you sharing your knowledge, experience, and perspective. So just go out and do it.
Yeah, I never felt confident enough doing any talks or workshops or anything until one day I was asked to do 4 different sessions for 4th graders. There was about a little over 200 4th graders for each of the 4 sessions. And these are kids. Kids are brutal. If you ever have to speak in front of kids, you better be prepared, because if they get bored, they will just play and fight and do whatever 4th graders do. But in this case, like every time I get nervous, I had dry mouth, my hands were shaking, and I wasn't sure I could go through with it. But what helped me was that I prepared. I prepared for this demonstration with my son. My son was a fourth grader at the time. So everything I was going to do in front of these kids, I did in front of my son. And that helped me be better prepared. what I had to do was I had to tell them the computer science, I had to show them that computer science was cool. And Minecraft was the big game at that time. I think it still is, but it was really big back then. So I had a little black little mini computer that I coded in Python, and then I challenged them and I said, hey, if who thinks you can beat me at building a wall on Minecraft? And of course all their hands went up. And so I said, okay, well, you're gonna do it with the controller and I'm gonna do it with my little computer. So of course I won every single time because it was a script that just built a giant wall. But all the kids were engaged, and that said, okay, if I can engage fourth graders, I can engage adults, because at least adults will be respectful and not zone off or walk away. So that being said, you're probably never going to feel super confident, but you just have to do it. You have to go out there and put yourself out there and just share your knowledge with the rest. Vui said it, you know, the audience is there and they're rooting for you. They're there to gain some knowledge from you. So just fill out those talk proposals. Love to see what you guys, you know, come up with and what you can speak about.
And finally, we'd like to share with you some resources and examples of talks. The WWCode website has a lot of great resources. We also have a YouTube channel with talks from past conferences and meetups. And as we mentioned earlier, Sierra did a really great first talk of the CFP Speaker Series. And you can find that link here. And by the way, I'll post a link to my slides when I'm done here, so then you can get these links as well. For examples of 20-minute talks, here's the link to my true or false enum talk. I also gave a talk at 360 IDEV, the same conference that Claudia mentioned. I did one last year talking about the benefits of being a polyglot, both in speaking languages and computer programming languages. So you can check that out as an example of a career 20-minute talk. And a really great example of a 40-minute talk, I thought, was when Sierra and Alex gave a talk on Jetpack Compose at the last WWCode conference. Jetpack Compose is an Android framework. And Claudia mentioned earlier the workshop she taught also for a WWCode conference on how to build a watchOS app. So the link for that is also available there for your reference.
All right. So at this point, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A or in the chat. I see we have 2 questions already. The first one is, what tools do you use to record the demo? Does Women Who Code provide something?
Well, I mean, I mentioned QuickTime. There's quite a few out there. I don't know if you can think of others, Claudia or Sierra.
So QuickTime, as Vui mentioned, is built into Mac. So that is a free software on Mac. And it also depends a lot on what you're recording. There's also free software built into Windows. It's called like Microsoft Stream that can do screen recordings, similar to like on your phone, you can do screen recordings as well. So it really depends a lot, I think, on what you're trying to record for what the best tool is. You could also do something like Zoom. Zoom, you can get a free 45-minute session, share your screen and then record that session to your computer as another option. So there are a lot out there. We do not specifically provide anything, but if you reach out to one of us, I'm sure that we can help you figure out a good free software for your needs.
Yeah, I use an app called ScreenFlow. I think it's only for Mac, but it's really simple to use. A few clicks of a button and then you have your video, and then you can edit in any video editing software.
Oh, I learned something. I haven't heard of that one before.
Next
Right.
question. Hi, I wonder, can the speaker choose if the talk gets public on the internet after?
Is it
I think it depends
specifically?
on, I think it depends on the organization. A lot, like when I did 360, they asked if it was okay to publish my video afterwards, and I said yes. I don't know how Women Who Code does it. Does everything go online, Sierra?
So for the conference, as far as I'm aware, that does include putting your video online after the conference. But for a lot of our track events, if that's not something that you're comfortable with, we do ask you before we record you and post it online. Same with a lot of the local network events as well. So we do try to make you as a speaker as comfortable as possible with recording and distributing your presentation after the fact.
Okay, do you have any suggestions on presentation styles if you are scheduled to do a pre-record 20-minute talk? I'm not sure what is meant by this question. Can we get a little bit more clarification?
I mean, I just kind of guessing out here. I guess it depends on, is it a workshop that has to be 20 minutes? Is it just to talk about a topic? So yeah, Serena, if you could provide a little bit, it's to talk about a topic, she says.
Okay. Oh, well, let's circle back to that. Can we somehow get feedback on CFPs we've submitted to Last Connect that were rejected? I don't know how to answer this one. Yeah, I know I've been a reviewer in the past, and I'm a reviewer for the conference this time as well. But the reviewers aren't allowed to give feedback directly to the speakers. So I don't know if Sierra, if you have the inside scoop on that, or.
I would want to agree with Vui. The way that we do our CFP reviews is that it is blind. So the folks reviewing your CFP submission will not know who you are and what your tech stack or any of your background. We'll just be looking at like your topic and your description and what kind of track that's on. And so I think that if you reach out after the fact, you may be able to get some feedback from the folks that actually send the rejections. But I would also warn you that we get a lot of submissions, and so it might not always be possible. Having said that, if your talk does get rejected, I would reach out to someone else in our Slacks, or like Vui, me, Claudia, we've all submitted talks before, and we might be able to give you tips, not specifically why your talk was rejected, because that might just be because we got so many other submissions for that particular topic that we just can't take them all. And it's a great CFP submission, and there just wasn't enough room for that track or something like that. But there are a lot of people in our community just in general that can give you feedback on your CFP if you do get rejected after submission, who have given talks before and submitted before and can give that kind of review on a more personal one-to-one basis.
And I want to add to what Sierra said, and the fact that because we get so many submissions, like, don't take it personally. I know that's easy for me to say, but another thing too is it's kind of a numbers game when it comes to submitting talks to conferences. So I would recommend, don't limit yourself to just the Connect Forward conference. If you know of other conferences, go ahead and submit to them your talks as well, and submit different topics. Or you can even just get a start by submitting a proposal to, say, your local meetup. I know that meetups are looking for speakers all the time. So, you don't have to start by speaking at a conference right away. You can start smaller and speak like at a local meetup. or something like that. Something where you can kind of learn and get some feedback on your speaking style and so forth, in kind of like a low stress environment. So I don't want people to get discouraged if their talk isn't accepted, because there are always opportunities to speak. And of course, the different tracks, Women Code, track communities, we're always looking for speakers.
So going back to your question, Cyrene, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that, probably butchering your name, and I apologize for that. But if it's a pre-recorded topic and you want to make it more interactive, as you stated in the comments, one thing you could do is just interact with the audience on chat or Slack. I saw that at iOS Dev 360, where they were presenting their presentation. They were showing their video, but then they were interacting, answering questions. The other thing, it depends on your video editing skills, but you can have a lot more content. You could film outside, you can film different things. The other thing you can do to make it is to pre-plan your polls. So as your video is playing, you're on Slack or the chat and just putting out your polls. So it just takes a little bit of creativity, but you could do more than just film yourself recording your talk. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and to add to what Claudia shared, I think it would help to just go out there and see other talks, because I learned so much about different styles of presenting just by seeing other talks. So hopefully, if you can see other talks, attend meetups, or attend conferences when you can, that will help inspire you and come up with different ways of presenting as well. Let's see, so Nguyen had a question: how should we react if our internet gets disconnected in the middle of your talk? Oh, you mean like your own internet at home?
Yes, she says yes.
Gosh. So I know, like, for the Connect Forward, we have a Slack channel or a Slack team for the moderators and speakers. So in those kinds of situations, I would get on Slack and just tell them what happened, and they'll help you figure something out.
I would just want to add that if you're doing it virtually, these kinds of things happen, and everyone knows that these kinds of things can happen. And there are some things that you can do to try to avoid it. For example, like if you have access to an Ethernet connection to your internet, you're less likely to have spotty internet or get disconnected. So doing those kinds of things can also actively avoid situations like that. But again, with these virtual conferences, everyone understands that there are going to be some technical difficulties along the way. And we try to support you as much as we can to get you back into the session and pick right back up where you left off.
And the other thing, it might not be the best video quality, but you always have your cell phone as kind of like a last possible thing you can use. Is you could use the camera on your phone. I mean, it's not going to be the best quality, but maybe you could at least go on and apologize.
And sometimes you can also use your phone's internet to connect. I had to do that yesterday for yesterday's Women Who Code mobile session. My internet was being a little spotty. I was worried about it. I connected to my phone's data and went through the session like that.
Where can I find some examples of non-tech talks? I am checking YouTube right now and don't see it. I went through the same issue when I was preparing my talk for iOS Dev 360, because I did a non-tech talk and I found TED Talks. TED Talks was the best place to kind of look. Now, of course, TED Talks are like, the hi, everybody wants to do one, but just seeing those topics of the TED Talks inspired my talk. So I would check out TED Talks.
And there's quite a few of career talks on the WWCode YouTube page as well. I don't know like how well to filter those, but they are there from past conferences.
And we also have several upcoming career navigation talks as well. So you can keep an eye out for that to see some live career talks specifically.
All right, so how can I tell if my idea is unique enough for a talk? Another question is, how can I tell if my topic is too broad for a talk and or can fit within the time for the talk? Well, as far as, excuse my phone, scam likely. I would say as far as uniqueness, you know, it's okay to talk about something that's already been discussed before at a conference or a meetup or whatever. You know, you can always put your own spin on it, and that's what makes it unique. Or you can drill down and you know, discuss like a subset or a niche within that topic. I think Claudia also has some more to add to this question as well.
Yes. So just lost my train of thought, but it doesn't necessarily have to be unique. It's because it's going to be your point of view, and that makes it different already. And then you kind of just, to make it fit into the time frame, it's just one of those things that you're going to have to practice with. You know, if it's a 40-minute talk, then you're going to have to narrow the scope of your talk to fit those 40 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever the time frame might be.
Is there a limit to the number of proposed talks you can submit? No. Yeah, because like as Sierra mentioned before, the talks are totally, they're anonymous, so we don't know who submitted them. So yeah, you can submit as many as you like. There's no limit.
One word of warning is that you will likely only get one accepted. And so I've definitely submitted multiple talks and then had one of my less favorite talks and get selected. So just keep that in mind as you submit those, that you really want to talk about all of those different topics.
Yeah, for last year's Connect Forward, I think I submitted like 4 different talks, and my workshop is the one that ended up getting picked, which is the one I was hoping to do, but I did submit 4 different proposals for that. And how do you choose a topic to present? Something that you're passionate about. You don't necessarily have to be super knowledgeable about it, but you do have to be passionate so that that passion kind of transfers onto your audience.
Yeah, if you're going to be talking about something, make sure it's something that you enjoy. Because I mean, it is a lot of work putting together a talk, but hopefully it's something fun for you to put together and fun for you to talk about. So yeah, make sure you're passionate about it, like Claudia said. Can anyone review my CFP application and provide feedback via email? Yeah, again, because the submission process is anonymous. Yeah, there's no way we can guarantee that. I don't know if we can add anything more to that.
If you're looking for feedback before you submit, number one, I would suggest going to the workshop part of this particular session. And number two, I would find if it's not ready yet, that's okay. You still have another 3 or 4 weeks to submit. Find someone else in your field or someone that can help you reviewed that particular CFP, someone else who has maybe submitted talks before in your field, and they can probably give you some really good feedback as well.
And how often will we have these virtual conferences in case we're too busy to talk this time? So it seems like the Connect Forward conferences have been happening about twice a year, like once in the spring and once in the fall. I don't know if that will be the case moving forward next year, but at least that seemed to be the case the past couple of years, I noticed.
And then can we find some proposal examples? Well, to answer that question, we can go ahead and move on to the workshop part of this conference. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the link in the chat and we will see you there.
Yep. Oh yeah, and I promised to share the link to our slides. I'll do that right now in the chat. So I put it up on GitHub. Thanks, Sierra, for the inspiration.